Welcome to this episode of the Mobile Classroom, the weekly podcast where we demonstrate today's most popular technologies. I'm James Messer, and this week it's episode 16, Why is my computer so slow? That's not me asking, that's actually the name of the episode, and it's a question that comes up often, sometimes many times during a day, because people, whether they're at work, whether they're at home, whether you're calling someone for information, they say, I'm sorry, you have to wait, our computer is very slow. Obviously, this is a problem that happens in many places. How do we really know our computer is being slow, though? We need to find out more information about that. Let's compare what's happening on our computer to other computers. Maybe it'd be nice if we could run some tests to see exactly what's running on our computer right now. And there may be some ways that you can speed up your computer just by running a few simple programs. We'll explore all of that and much more in this episode. If you're watching this podcast, you may realize already that this is one of our free Mobile Classroom podcasts. We give out one or two or three of these before we ever go through one that's just for members only. So every third video that you're going to get to from us every third week is one that's exclusively for mobile members. This week, however, the entire video, the entire podcast, completely free. You can watch it from end to end and see everything that you would ever want to see. And if you're a mobile member, however, you get a little extra bonus. You get to download one of our video podcast editions that is in complete HD, 720p HD resolution. So if you're a mobile member and you're watching this, you're seeing this crystal clear in the native resolution that we use to record it. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a mobile member and supporting our podcast, you can check our website at themobileclassroom.com/members. We'll tell you all about it. There are many things we can do that address the performance of our computer. Maybe the problem is one that recently occurred. Maybe yesterday your computer was running just fine, then you installed a new program, or you installed a new piece of hardware, or you updated a driver, or you installed a patch for your operating system, and now it's not performing as well as it once was. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just turn back the clock, back to a previous time, so that the computer was running just fine a week ago? Let's go back to the way things were a week ago. I'll show you how we do that. We also might want to make some comparisons. How slow really is our computer? Is it a situation where we've had our computer about a year and a half and now it just seems slow? Or is it really acting a little bit slower than other computers in its same type of systems? It'd be nice if we had a way to compare and contrast our computer against somebody who has the exact same model with exactly the same configuration. I'll show you how to do that as well. We're also going to look under the hood a little bit. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. We see these nice fancy Windows screens. We're able to work in our graphical environment, but under the surface, there are a lot of programs that are constantly running. There are things always happening behind the scenes. We're going to lift open the hood a little bit, and I'll show you how to look inside of there, try to get an understanding of what applications running on your computer are really using the most resources. And then if you're really in a bad situation, you may have realized that you've got some bad programs on your computer. Perhaps it's infected with spyware or adware or malware of some kind, and you would like to get rid of it. What is the best way that you could remove all of these really bad things from your system? We'll step through all of that in this episode. To learn more about how we could turn back the clock, we're going to learn about a feature in Windows called System Restore. This was something that showed up in Windows XP. You'll find it in Windows Vista and Windows 7. It's a really great function. I've used it a number of times when a driver's been installed, when something has gone wrong on my computer with the configuration, and I needed to go back to a previous time frame. Before we get into actually performing an actual system restore from one of those restore points, let me show you how you would configure your system so that it would actually make use of these. This is going to be important for you to do well before you get to a point where you're going to need it. So maybe during this podcast, have a look at your system and see how yours is configured. In Windows XP, the easiest way to get there is from Start, Control Panel. This also works the same in Vista and Windows 7. You want to go into the System applet. In that applet, you're going to see a tab here called System Restore. The option by default is that System Restore is turned on. If for some reason this machine was one that was used maybe at a kiosk, maybe it's a configuration that's set up that will never change and you will never go back to System Restore, you could actually turn it off. Obviously not recommended if this is a system that you use every day to do your everyday things. Notice that you do get to choose just how much disk space is going to be available for System Restore. Every time your system takes a restore point snapshot, it takes essentially everything that's changed puts it off into a special area of your hard drive. That way, if you ever need to go back to any point in time, you simply point your computer back to that point in time, and it remembers everything that changed and now rebuilds it based on that point in time. Very useful to have, and you can adjust this. If you're someone who doesn't have a lot of hard drive space, you're very concerned about the amount of hard drive space. After all, I'm using over 15 megabytes of hard drive space on my computer just for System Restore. If my space was getting very tight, maybe I would like to roll that back. This is actually 15,000 megabytes. This is 15 gig on my machine. I have a 150 gig hard drive, but I make a lot of changes. So I want to be sure to use this 12% of my disk space so that I could go back in time if I wanted. But you can adjust that. If you think that 15 gig is too much, maybe you'd like to cut that in half or so. You could bring your slider down, maybe make it about 8 gig, and then you'd feel much better about how much space you were using. I like everything on mine. I'm not really running out of disk space. I have a couple of drives in this computer, so I'm fine with the way that it's set up. And it will give you a status. If it's not using System Restore, it'll tell you that it's not using System Restore. So you simply need to go to this System Properties applet panel and be able to make sure that it's running. As long as you see that it is currently monitoring that drive, then you're in good shape. And if you ever now need to go back in time, you'll be able to do that. We can start System Restore very easily by just going to your help. Who would have thought that going to help would actually help you? Well, this is one great reason. We're going to click our Start menu and click Help and Support. In Windows XP, this is an option right from this main Help and Support Center. You can see there's a lot of things on the screen, but the one that's very interesting is right here, Undo Changes to Your Computer with System Restore. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to start the System Restore program. This looks almost exactly the same, whether you're working in Windows XP or Windows Vista or Windows 7. It's a similar thing. If you're in Vista and Windows 7, System Restore is actually in the Accessories folder within your Start menu, or obviously you can just click Start and type right in there System Restore, and it will bring it right up for you. You've got a couple of options here. One is to restore your computer to an earlier time. We're going to hit that in just a moment. Another one's a really interesting one. Create a restore point. You may have seen this if you've ever installed a program, and before the program really gets going with its installation process, it says creating a restore point. That's what it's doing behind the scenes, is it's locking down the config. That way, if something bad happens after you've installed this program, you can simply come back to this restoration point, go back to an earlier point in time and say, you know, that program I just installed, that was a bad idea. Let's roll back to that earlier time. If you want to manually set a restore point, you simply come in here and say, I'd like to create a restore point. You click Next. You can put a description in here, manual restore point during podcast. That'll be useful for me. And click Create. And when you hit the Create button, it's going to sit here and churn through the hard drive a little bit and create a restore point. Usually this doesn't take very long. In fact, this just took a few seconds, and it created a new restore point for this time. If we'd like to do something else, let's click Home. Let's say that we needed to go back in time. Let's say now we would like to restore some of these things that have occurred. Let's click Restore My Computer to an Earlier Time and click Next. Then it brings up a graph, a view in a calendar form of exactly what's available. So not only do we see exactly what days, you can see they're bold, where you can go into this and see there were things that changed. I can go all the way back to the 4th. Let's see if I go back into January, there's a couple months ago where things were installed. I installed a new program. So it said, yep, you can go back to that time frame. We'll go back into the previous year. I can go back months back in the configurations. Now, obviously, the farther you go back, the more disk space it's using. So the more disk space available to your restore points will give you a little bit more time to go back there. So if you're looking at this and thinking, wow, I don't really need to go back that far, maybe I can restore some of my disk space just by changing where this restore point uses some of those things. But just imagine, you can really go back quite a ways with this. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is just restoring your configuration. This is not deleting any of your applications. It's not deleting any of your documents. If you've created a document, you've written a book, you've got spreadsheets, you have presentations on your system, they won't change. This only changes the raw configuration of your computer. So that's important to keep in mind, that even though you may be restoring back to a previous point in time, you're not deleting anything you might need for later. Now, obviously, you may want to always have a backup. It's always a good idea. It's something I always will tell you. But it's also something to keep in mind that you don't have to worry that things will be deleted if you have to go back to a previous point in time. One other thing to keep in mind with restore points, especially as they relate to viruses and malware and some of these really evil programs, is that they get onto your computer, and one of the first things they do is they go back to all of your restore points and also infect those. That means that if I did go back to this time in November, even if the spyware was just put on my system, when I restored back from November, the bad malware and spyware would already be in the restoration. You just can't get away from it. So that's why it's important to first always have a clean backup you can go back to. And secondly, don't rely on Restore Point to fix everything for you. There may be other things you have to do. And later in this podcast, I'll show you how you can remove some of those viruses and some of that really bad malware and spyware without having to go back to these Restore Points. Maybe the problem with your slowdowns on your computer really doesn't have to do with a program you installed or it seeming to perform very slowly. Maybe this is just something that's happened over time. Or maybe you'd like to make some comparisons. I've had my laptop here for about 1.5 years. It's been a workhorse for me. I use it to produce all of my podcasts, produce all of my videos. It follows me around the world. We travel constantly together. What a great companion my laptop is, but it's 1.5 years old. It's getting a little worn around the edges, and I'm wondering, would it be better if I invested in a new laptop? And if I get a new laptop, should I get a Windows machine, Mac OS? Should I be running Linux? What can really give me my best bang for the buck? To be able to do that, we need to then have some way to compare between different systems, perform a benchmark test. And in our industry, there have been a lot of different kinds of benchmarks that you can run. And there are a number of really good programs out there that can do some benchmarking for us. I want to run one today. It's very easy to use. It runs extremely well, and it runs on many different platforms, and it's called Geekbench. You can find Geekbench at primatelabs.ca/Geekbench. This is a company that has really created a very interesting platform. One of the things I really like about this particular benchmark is it's very simple to run, and it works on many different platforms. This isn't the case with many of the more popular benchmarks out there. Now, benchmarks themselves can be a little controversial because you aren't exactly sure how it's being calculated. Are there certain things with one operating system that might work better or differently in another operating system? And those are valid concerns. If you're someone who is having to evaluate hardware and there's a lot of money on the line, or you're really trying to get a valid comparison down to the very detailed level of exactly how well video runs and how well the CPU runs and the different ways that memory is used, maybe this isn't the type of benchmark for you. What I'd like to do is just have a very simple benchmark that can give me one or a few numbers to tell me about how my computer is running. Geekbench certainly can do that for us. Geekbench also has an online component that will take your result and compare it to other computers and compare it to people who have the same computer as you. You can tell very quickly if everybody with this computer is getting about the same performance or if yours is a little better than theirs. Let's download Geekbench, and you can do it right from the Geekbench website. And notice the different platforms: Mac OS X, Windows, Linux, and Solaris. So already you've got some nice ways to do some comparisons. Run it on the Windows machine, run it on a Linux machine, run it on Mac OS X, and compare the differences between those two. You can make now some decisions. Should I be moving to a different operating system or different platform based on some of the numbers you're getting from Geekbench? We're going to select the download for Windows. It'll take us right to saving this to our disk. We'll save the file, and then we'll simply run the setup program, a very simple setup program that starts up Geekbench's install, very quickly puts it on the hard drive. The Geekbench setup program, very simple to run. We'll click Next. It says, where would you like to put it? Put it in the Geekbench folder, create a program shortcut for it, copies just a few files down there, and it's done pretty quick. You even get an option from the install to run it. Let's do that. Geekbench is a program that is something that needs to be licensed. You pay for Geekbench to be able to use it. There are some open source and freeware benchmarks out there. None of them are really this easy to use and this comprehensive across many operating systems. So there may be some value into acquiring this and just using it for a lot of different things. And they have a very, very broad and very open licensing for this for you to be able to use it. There are a lot of different options. You can find all about purchasing it and all of those options on the Geekbench website. We're just going to try it though. Notice that it does tell you that if you're running a 64-bit operating system on 64-bit hardware and you would like to do benchmarks, you're not going to be able to do those 64-bit bit benchmarks here, only 32-bit. Well, let's try it and give it a shot. And you can see it's a very simple front end. In fact, let me minimize this in the background and we can really get a feel for exactly how simple this is on the screen. Here it is, Geekbench 214. It tells me I'm running Windows x86 32-bit, Microsoft Windows 7 Professional. I'm running an Intel Core 2 Duo processor, a T9300 that is running at 2.5 gigahertz on a Dell Studio 1735. And I've got about 4 gig of memory in here, and it's 667 megahertz memory. So you really don't have a lot of options here. Your file pull-down menu allows you to exit. The help pull-down menu gives you help. That's it. There's one big button that says Run Benchmarks. I can do this. Let's do that. Click Run Benchmarks. The benchmarks I'm going to get in this particular example probably not going to run the best way that they could be because I'm doing recording of the screen in the background. So there are a number of processes already taking place behind the scenes that's going to slow down the performance of my computer. But still, I wanted to give you a feel for what it looked like. And you can see it's running through a lot of different benchmarks right now on different aspects of my operating system, different calculations that it's performing, different algorithms against the CPUs, things that it's doing against the video. You're going to get feedback after this completes that's going to give you one big number, and then it's going to break out for you different numbers that you can use to compare at a more detailed level against this system and others that might be out there. Here's the results. Our result display shows us that I got a 2506 as my big Geekbench score. And that is a little bit less than what I was running when I wasn't recording the screen, so it's a little bit expected. And then those breakdowns we saw, the processor performance, floating point performance, memory performance, and you can start to see as you scroll down, gives you a lot of information about your computer and then explanations of how well different things scored. You can go through each one of these and get details about which tests scored better than others. If you're really into trying to get the very last bit of power out of your computer, this is a great way to do it. You can close this out. You can save this particular set of results, or you can submit them. This is an interesting one. Let's click Submit. It's going to pop up a web browser screen. And now you can look to see for your Dell Studio 1735, here's all of those same results. If you already have an account on Geekbench, you could log into your profile and save this there, and then other people can also compare. If you'd now like to chart the performance of similar systems, this brings up a list of your 1735. This is my Dell Studio 1735. The processor speed in gigahertz and the Geekbench 2 score. Now you can see a number of Dell 1735s are here. Some appear to be running at 2 gigahertz, some just a little above that. And here's a system running at 2.5, 2.6, which is what mine is. These two results are about the same. This one that is red is the one that I just did. The one that's blue is one that I ran before on my 1735. I got a little bit better score there, 2771, because the system I'm doing all of my recording behind the scenes. But even then, the number wasn't that different. So it's very interesting that I can now see that performance and what people are doing with it. Now that's a 2771, but now I'd like to take that number and compare it to other people. One of the things I can do is go to the PC performance chart right here, and this is going to give me a breakdown of a lot of different systems and see exactly the way those systems are performing. If I had an Intel Core i7-920, I'd be at 7,503 on my Geekbench score, and it goes down from there. So you could see overall, I'm really in this 1.5-year-old laptop kind of at the bottom of the pack here for some of these newer, faster, better chips. So if it's time to think about upgrading, this may be the time. And now I can sort through this list and get a feel for what other people are seeing on their benchmarks with these particular pieces. And you can drill down on other aspects of the list. They have other roll-ups. You can look at Macintosh breakouts, a lot of different really great places to see, is your system really slow, or is it just you thinking that your system is slow? And now you can make changes, come back to this, rerun your tests, and see if it really did improve the performance of your system. It's a great trial and error and test way to see if what you can do on your system really makes a difference in the long run. Now it's time to get our fingers a little bit dirty. We're going to get under the hood of your computer and see exactly what is running behind the scenes. There's something that's always going to be interesting to see what's the most active process on your system, what's using the most amount of memory, what's using the most CPU right now. We should be able to look and see exactly what's happening with our Windows Task Manager. An easy way to start Task Manager is right down here at the taskbar. If you right mouse click anywhere there isn't anything currently, you get this set of menus, and one of the options right there is Task Manager. You can also start Task Manager pretty easily by holding down Control, Shift, and Escape all at the same time, and it will pop up Task Manager. Now, Task Manager, really great application in that it shows us not only what's running right now, but it can give us some historical performance of how the computer is performing. In fact, let's start there on this Performance tab, and you can see how the CPU has been performing. I've got page file usage history. Windows takes it a lot of resources that it swaps in and out to this page file, so it's nice to get an idea of how much of the page file we're using. We can see how many handles, the commit charge, which is memory that's being used, physical memory in the system, and kernel memory. So if you have a certain amount of RAM in your computer and you're wondering how much physical memory is really available right now, should I be thinking of getting an upgrade because I only have 512 megabytes or about that in the system? Now you can start comparing and contrasting that. Now we're wondering if our computer is slow, and if we're looking at our CPU usage, if your CPU usage is way up high and it stays there constantly, then you have to wonder what's running on your computer right now that's using so much CPU. If we were to start a program, let's start Google Chrome. I'll double click Google Chrome. It's going to pop to the front here, and you can see the CPU goes up whenever anything happens on your computer. And when Google Chrome is loaded, it goes back down again. Now, if you'd like to watch this in real time and see everything that's going on your system, we can click the Processes tab. The Processes will show us every application running behind the scenes. If you've never looked at this before, this is almost overwhelming at all of these different programs. It's not very simple to understand. These aren't easy names to understand exactly what they are referring to. It's much easier to go to the Applications tab and see, oh yes, there's Google Chrome right here. But if you're someone who needs to know exactly what processes are running, you want to know exactly how much memory processes are taking and what's using the most amount of CPU, it's a great place to go. So one of the things you'll notice is that the default view is that it shows you the program that's running, the user that launched that application, the CPU utilization, you can see these numbers are changing dynamically, and how much memory that application is changing and using. You can see it's also pages of this. So you've got many things you may have to scroll up and down to be able to see. But there's also more that you can put on the screen. If I go to my View pull-down menu, I can choose Select Columns. And you can add more information to the screen as if this wasn't enough. And here's the ones that I use because this one is really interesting. Anything dealing with memory delta, I/O delta, disk delta, you want to be able to get a feel for how much is happening over time. So I want to be able to see how much has been written over time. Maybe I want to see the number of I/O writes. Maybe I want to see the number of I/O reads. You can put a lot of different information on here and get a feel for exactly how much is being used at any particular time. And click OK. That's going to really fill up your screen with all of these different things. But what I'm interested in seeing with this is understanding, especially on these Delta views, how much is happening with these applications at any particular time. Notice there's the Explorer.exe just has a constant page fault delta, but really nothing else happening with that. If we have any other applications that are doing things, in fact, we'll close out this Chrome and let's start up OpenOffice Impress. You're going to see these numbers start to really increase. This is this OpenOffice. I can see that the Explorer is doing a lot of traffic and work. I can see other programs like JQS. I'm not even sure what JQS is. You can right mouse click on it and you can get more information about setting priorities or simply ending this process entirely. There's a lot of places where you're really missing information. For instance, we don't know what JQS is. We don't know where it started from. We don't have a lot more information about that application. Fortunately, there are some really nice third-party programs we can run that are going to give us a lot more information, but really have in a very similar format to what we get in Task Manager. The application I'm thinking about using is to replace Task Manager with something called Process Explorer. I went to sysinternals.com, which redirected me to the Windows sysinternals page. The sysinternals is a group of free utilities and technical information about getting better performance and information from your computer. There are a lot of really geeky things in here, but one of the top 10 downloads, in fact, the one at the very top, is Process Explorer. Let's download this. And you can see already this looks very similar to the task manager we were just using, but it seems that there are some additional capabilities. I'm going to click download. It's going to download Process Explorer.zip. I'm going to double click the zip and just have Windows open up that zip file. I'm going to run Process Explorer from here. You may want to extract everything, and Windows is nice. It'll put it right into the downloads directory under Process Explorer. Let's do that. We'll just unzip the whole thing right now because we'll probably come back to this later and we'll finish that view. Great. Let's run Process Explorer. When you first run it, it's going to give you a prompt that says, do you accept the end user license agreement? And we'll agree with that. And then Process Explorer will start. Let me minimize these windows that's behind Process Explorer because I really want to open this up and show you just how much information is here. Now, already you're seeing some comparisons to Task Manager. It shows a bunch of tasks. It shows you the CPU that's being used for those tasks, but we get a little more description about the tasks that are out there. In fact, I'll make that column a little wider. You can see the company names associated with that, and you also have other things that you can set. For instance, I can select columns again, just like I had on the other, but look at all the different columns that are available, pages and pages. They even separated them out by tab because I wanted to add and remove a lot of different things. You could really fill up the screen with a lot of information. Let's focus on process performance. Let's do things like delta reads, delta writes, delta others, just to get a feel for what's going on with some of these things. And if I click OK, it creates these new sets of columns. And notice now it's really easy to see which ones are changing. If I scroll up and down, you can really see that there is a Microsoft process here. There's another virtual machine process, which happens to be the one that I'm running on my machine. This is really some really nice capabilities. But if I double click on any of these, it opens this up and gives me a lot more information about it. So if you see a particular program using a lot of memory or a lot of CPU utilization, double click on it. It will tell you exactly what program that's running from. You can even get over time performance of that application and get more information about exactly what it's done since that application or that service or that process started up. This will really help you if your system is really slowing down and you're seeing particular programs using up a lot of memory or a lot of CPU. You can find out what that is. You can say, oh, that's OpenOffice. It's using a lot more memory than I thought it should. It's time for me to get a memory upgrade so I can run that very graphical program or that very big application that I want to run. This really, as I mentioned, gets under the hood. But once you start getting accustomed to Process Explorer, you can find this can be a really, really powerful resource for you to help you really get the most performance out of your computer. Occasionally, I'm called by a family member, I'm called by a friend, and they say, my computer is really slow. And I have to wonder exactly what's going on. And you sit down at the computer and they turn it on. It's a relatively new computer. And after they turn it on, it takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's not even started up and gotten Windows running all the way yet. You know, there's really some pretty drastic problems there. And unfortunately, more often than not, it tends to be something related to spyware, to adware, to malware, to viruses. And this is something that is becoming a very, very bad problem for people, especially when they don't know. They can't take care of their computer because they had no idea of the software that they needed to be able to protect it. Well, there's two applications that we'll focus on. If you want to go back and look at our podcast we did on adware and spyware and malware, you know that Microsoft Security Essentials, that was the one that we were using in that podcast. Microsoft Security Essentials is a great one to download because that will give you anti-spyware and virus protection for absolutely free just from a download from Microsoft. So at the very bare minimum, make sure that that is installed on every machine you touch. If they have nothing on there now, make sure that's installed. If they already have antivirus, make sure that its signatures are up to date. But what if they have gotten some malware? Not every antivirus program and anti-malware program will stop everything. So sometimes it'll get on a machine and it needs to be cleaned off. So what program is the best to use for that? Well, there's a lot out there that can be used, but one that I really go back to time and time again is called Malwarebytes. You can find Malwarebytes at the aptly named malwarebytes.org. And Malwarebytes, there is a version that is absolutely free. There's another version that you can pay for and that will always be on your machine and always be checking in real time, have some other nice capabilities too. If we can look here, you can see there's a download free version right here. Let's do that. It will tell you that when it moves to the cnet.com website for download, that we can download it and that it is 4.88 megabytes. Thank you for downloading Malwarebytes Anti-Malware. Well, you're very welcome. It's going to download this version. Once it gets downloaded, let's install it. The setup process for Malwarebytes, pretty easy. We'll double click the setup program that we just downloaded. Here's our open file security warning. Windows telling us this is an executable. Is it okay? It certainly is. We'll click OK. Which language would we like to use? English is good. Welcome to the setup. Next to continue. The license agreement, make sure you read through that and that you accept the terms. We'll click Next. Tells you about the latest version and things that were updated, fixed, or changed in the previous versions. Where would you like to put it? Program files, Malwarebytes, anti-malware sounds good. And it will create a start menu folder for us. And let's also put a desktop icon right there on the desktop as well and click Install. Installs pretty quickly, runs through a few of the executables, puts them on your hard drive. And then once it's completed, we can run Malwarebytes. When Malwarebytes starts up, you'll notice one of the first things that it does is update itself. Every malware program, every spyware program, every antivirus program is only as good as its last update. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of new signatures out for all of these types of things that come out every week, every day. So you want to be sure that you've got the latest database, the latest set of signatures, and ours was updated from version 3510 to 3723. Click OK, and the Malwarebytes anti-malware program starts up. You've got a lot of different options across the top. You can just go to perform a quick scan. So right from this main menu, if you do nothing else, just click the scan button and away it goes. If you're already on somebody's computer and you suspect there's a problem, it's taking a long time, you might be better off just performing a full scan, have it go through the entire machine. There's other things here like protection. Now this is the free version, so you don't get things like real-time protection and a scheduler that will go through this every night. This is a fantastic program. I'm not affiliated with it in any way. It's just one that I use a lot, and it might be worth your time to have a look and see if you'd like to buy that. So that's what one of the advantages the full version gives you. If you're wondering if the database is updated, you can always go to the Update tab and do that. And there's a lot of other options in here to go through the quarantine area and the logs and go through the process of what it may have found in the past. In our case, we want to scan. We'll do a quick scan. I'll just click the scan button and it will go through the process. It's going to go through your registry. It's going to look at major parts of your hard drive. It's going to go through the different programs that are apt to get malware and spyware and run through them. So it's not looking at every possible thing on your system. It's looking in the places where it almost always can find the bad stuff. And so it goes through relatively quickly compared to looking through every possible thing on your computer. Well, hopefully this episode is giving you some ideas of things you can do to help understand why your system might be running slow compared to other systems that are similar to yours. And finally, maybe some things you can do to help speed up a system that may already have some problems underneath the hood. If you'd like to get more information on when a new Mobile Classroom episode might be out, you might want to follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/mobileclassroom. We've also got a Facebook page. If you go to our website at themobileclassroom.com, you can watch our videos, join us on that Facebook page. Much more is on that website. And if you'd like to send me an email, you could always send me one at james@themobileclassroom.com. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next time on The Mobile Classroom.